And then I was saying, TS is gonna give me a D1 crash out. Like, I'm so cooked. I just want to glort my dweebis in peace and... Oh my god! Hey! You just broke my phone! Did I really break your phone?
You need to leave!
Yeah. Okay, but do you even know how that thing works? How any computer works, for that matter. No. Tell you what, you sit through my lesson, and I will personally fix that ugly brick of yours. Yeah, well, if it's free, then I really don't care. I don't really have anything else to do now that my phone is demolished. Then I, Mr. Computer, will take you on a tour through the computer. First thing you gotta know is that there are 3 sections of hardware: input, output, and processing. Wait, that's kind of like an IPO for coding. Yes, there are things that plug into the computer that send a message that is translated into machine language so the computer understands what the user wants. Inputs can be mice, keyboards, pen touchpads, scanners, and cameras. So then I'm assuming that the output is how the computer communicates to the user? Wow, I misjudged you. You catch on quick. I'm gonna show you what all the processing parts do to make that output happen. Wait, what did you think of me before? Let's start with the sound card. This is hardware that controls output and input audio signals. It might be a separate circuit board or a chipset on the motherboard. It has jacks, which are places to connect output devices like speakers and headphones, and input devices like microphones. How does it work? A digital to analog converter, of course, called a DAC. It translates sound waves in an analog signal into bits and bytes, which are digital information written as binary code using zeros and ones. The sound card is able to take a digital file and use an output device to emit sound waves that vibrate to the eardrum. You know, when I was on call with my bros earlier, I guess we were using our sound cards. My digital sound waves were being converted in their phone as an analog sound, so my boy Chips Ahoy could hear what I was saying as an analog sound. Great use of those application skills, youngster. Next up is the graphics card. This is hardware responsible for displaying images onto a monitor. Like the last card, it might have a separate circuit board or a chipset on the motherboard. Now, this chip has its own processing unit called a graphics processor unit. Okay. But it is more widely known as the GPU. This little guy processes images because images are resource hogs. It renders images, has a ROM chip for firmware, and a RAM chip for storing information. What's RAM and ROM? Oh, you sweet summer child. That question is excellent. Let's start with RAM. RAM is an acronym for Random Access Memory. Memory that depends on power, aka volatile memory, meaning without power, that data you put on it is lost forever. Ever. Okay, but if the data gets lost forever, then why do we need it in the first place? Think of it as short-term memory. Do you remember what you had for breakfast 2 days ago? How about a week? Of course you don't, because if you did, that would only take up space in your brain. The RAM, in a similar sense, is to remember information that the computer is currently using. It's used to store data while temporarily working on it and running application programs. When does this happen, you ask? Whenever the computer is in use. Any window, tab, app that you have open right now is being stored in the RAM. Just remember, if it isn't stored somewhere else, it's gone. Okay, now what about ROM? Yes, the ROM, standing for read-only memory. Pretty self-explanatory with that title. It's memory that can only be read, not changed. ROM is non-volatile, which means it doesn't lose memory without power. Sorry for interrupting. You'll feel even more sorry if you try that shit again. Remember, we made a deal earlier, and I could make sure you never get any sort of computer ever again. Why do you think my name is Mr. Computer? The ROM stores basic programming instructions called firmware. Firmware is placed on the ROM to protect it from being deleted. This may be a chip that can never be changed, but firmware does need its updates. For this reason, there are different kinds of firmware, such as PROM, EPROM, and EPROM. Now, onto arguably the most important part of the computer, the CPU, the central processing unit. This is considered the brain of the computer, doing all your calculations as per your request. This little guy is located on the motherboard with a small fan over top. If the CPU is like the brain, then how does it actually work? Does it have nerves or something? Are there different parts of it like the brain? What an excellent comparison. When you are using your computer, the program instructions and data files you are currently using are temporarily stored in RAM. The CPU takes instructions from RAM, decode it in a processing unit, then sent to the arithmetic logic center, calculated, compared, or tested to make logical decisions. The final step has data stored in the temporary memory location of the CPU called cache, or sent back to RAM. While this all happens, a unit called the program counter keeps track of instructions to make sure that they are followed by the CPU in the correct order. This kind of seems like a lot, Mr. Computer. How fast does this even happen? The speed of this whole ordeal happening is called clock speed. How many times the CPU can perform an instruction, a tick, in a second. Clock speed is measured in megahertz, which is 1,000,000 ticks per second, or gigahertz, which is 1,000,000,000 ticks per second.
I had a history segment recorded, but I decided to delete it because it was way too long. But basically, CPUs used to be slow, and now they're not really. Now they're really fast. So now I'm gonna talk about why that is.
The first reason was chip design. The CPU consists of transistors, a device that amplifies current in electronic gadgets and increases CPU speed. On the original 8080 microchip, there were only 6,000 transistors. However, the average CPU today has at least a few billion. The second reason is internal cache, a temporary storage unit for frequently accessed data. RAM temporarily stores info and sends it to the CPU. This is called bus speed. But instead of waiting for this to happen, internal cache comes in, helping to speed up the process. The third reason is turbo boost technology, allowing the processor to be overclocked. This automatically senses when the processor needs to work faster and temporarily increases the speed. When the workload decreases, the CPU returns to normal, returns to normal processing speed. Wow, the CPU sure does a lot. Yep, and if this wasn't clear already, the motherboard is a main circuit board. So the backbone, in a sense. It connects all internal components. Now, I bet you're wondering how the computer turns on and does all these things. I'm not, but go ahead anyway. There is a built-in software within your motherboard that loads first when you turn on the computer. BIOS, the basic input-output system, is a built-in software on the motherboard that loads first when you turn on your computer. Its job is to wake up all your hardware and find your operating system. Post, power on self-test, is the diagnostic test run by the BIOS to ensure that all hardware is working before booting. The BIOS settings are stored in the CMOS battery, a small coin-shaped battery on your computer's motherboard. The CMOS battery powers the CMOS chip, which stores information like the date, time, and hardware settings. Oh, so that's how my computer knows what time it is. Yep. Just to re-explain how the power on process goes again, you turn on the computer, post and BIOS happens. Then the operating system is loaded into RAM, a special RAM called cache, and any active applicants are in cache. Minimized applications are in RAM, and applications not open are in your hard drive. What's a hard drive? Wow, you are great at cueing me. Hard drives are used to store digital information in a relatively permanent form. Hard drives usually fall into two categories: SSDs, solid state drives, which store data using transistors, and these are faster than the other version, although a bit more fragile in longevity. The other is HDDs, hard disk drives, which use parallel disks and magnets to write to the disk. It's slower, but has more storage cost-wise. I may be a stupid Gen Z kid, as is written in the script, but should there be some sort of power source? This, my boy, is where the PSU comes in, power supply unit. This looks different from computer to computer, as do most of these parts, but the concept of this is the same. It provides individualized power to the computer components. So, is the computer tour finally over? Can I go home? We're forgetting one crucial part of the computer: the cooling system. There are two different kinds: passive and active. Passive cooling is a fanless cooling option that relies on convection and conduction. Active cooling uses mechanical components like fans. I would talk about this more, but honestly, that's pretty much it. I'll just fix your phone so we can end this awful bit, and I can leave. That was so unsatisfying. Why was this video so long?